Start. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Giving Tuesday cheat sheet. We are happy to have you joining us today and appreciate you taking time from your busy schedules. My name is Kimberly and I'm part of the QGive team. If you haven't had the opportunity to work with us before, we're an online fundraising platform dedicated to helping nonprofits raise more money. And part of how we do that is through webinars like this one. A few things about today. Today's webinar will be about 45 minutes with a Q&A session to follow, keeping our total time together to just about an hour. We are recording today, so we are recording the presentation, and each of you will receive a copy of the presentation and the recording in a follow-up email with some other great resources tomorrow. If you do have questions at any point during the presentation, please go ahead and pop them into the questions, the Q&A box, and our presenters are ready to answer those and discuss everything at the end of our session today. After today's webinar, you should be receiving a prompt to respond to a survey, a quick 4-question survey. So your feedback is crucial in determining future content for webinars and other resources we develop. So we'd love it if you took the survey for us today. So a little bit about QGive before we dive in. We've been helping nonprofit organizations implement and grow their online fundraising programs since 2007. And as the importance of online giving has grown, our mission has remained the same, and that's to help others like you fulfill your passion to make a difference. And we do that through our comprehensive suite of fundraising tools, featuring everything from donation forms, event registration, peer-to-peer fundraising, text giving with outbound messaging, and auction events. We love it when we're able to connect our partners and our nonprofit friends in hopes that it helps increase your nonprofit's effectiveness and success. So today we are excited to introduce you to one of our strategic partners, Donor Perfect, a comprehensive solution for donor management and fundraising with everything nonprofits need to grow. And we are joined today by two very intriguing ladies. We've got Julia and Gackenbach. I know I'm probably still not saying it correctly, the communications manager, and Kelly Ramage. And so without further ado, ladies, I turn it over to you.
All right, well, let's see here. Welcome everybody. I am just taking over here so that Julia and I can lead the conversation, and I am going to let Julia get us started, but I just want to personally say I'm thrilled to be here. So Julia, let's get started with this great topic of Giving Tuesday.
Great, yes. Thank you all so much for being here. First, we'll introduce ourselves. My name is Julia Gackenbach, which was very close, Kimberly. I was impressed. Before I was married, I didn't know how to say this last name either, so I understand. I am currently the communications manager at Donor Perfect. Prior to my role here at Donor Perfect, I worked for 10 years in nonprofits, 5 of which I was a development director for a local organization. I'm based in South Florida, so here in South Florida, and it was amazing to be part of the nonprofit sector and to help, make the world a better place. I commend each and every one of you for your role in your organization. I know there is a lot that you get to do every day, and I just want you to know that I was in the trenches with you and totally understand, and I'm excited to have a conversation with you about how to make Giving Tuesday the best one yet.
All right, and I'm Kelly Ramage. I am the lead training specialist at Donor Perfect. And I have been with Donor Perfect for many years, and I love my job. I really love my job coming up with strategies and understanding CRMs and how they can become tools, really good, solid tools to help you fulfill your mission. So I am very excited to be co-presenting with Julia. She is a wealth of information and just loves you all and what you do. You see it ooze from her. So Julia, let's go ahead and get this show on the road.
Thanks, Kelly. So today we're going to go through all of these phases. So we have broken Giving Tuesday down into 3 different phases, each of which breaks down some of the tasks that are necessary for that phase. So we're going to take you through all 3 phases as in-depth as possible, and then, as Kimberly mentioned, have some time for questions at the end. So phase 1 is all about research and goal setting. This will go through your data preparation, looking at old reports, things that will help you understand where you're headed this Giving Tuesday. You don't want to get started without having all the right tools. So we'll look at prepping your data, certain segments that you should really focus on, and tools and integrations. And then phase 2, we'll go into some of the writing and repurposing. So making sure you're telling the right stories, figuring out your theme and how to place that in multiple places, especially using things like forms to make sure that your message is consistent among multiple platforms. And then lastly, we'll go through executing and stewarding. So pulling reports after Giving Tuesday, looking at your goals and making sure to thank your partners. So these, for the sake of this presentation, we've broken this up into 4 particular roles: the strategist, the administrator, the communicator, and the networker. So the strategist is focused on the overall strategy of the program, what kind of goals you're going to be setting up, how are you going to use the funds, all of those things. The administrator is in the back end, making sure that your data is put correctly into your CRM or will be able to be pulled reports in the future. Your communicator is the person who's focusing on your outward communication when it comes to your website or your emails or what your social media looks like. And then your networker is kind of your hype person, the person who's out there rallying people to give at any moment. I will say, as I mentioned, I was a development director. When I first was hired, I was the only person on my team. So all 4 of these roles were me. So if that is how you feel, it's totally okay. We're going to walk through that a little bit. I understand having to carry all of the things. And so you are not alone in that. And we will address that, don't worry. But we have broken it down so you know maybe which hat you're wearing at the time of doing a certain checklist item if you are a team of 1.
Yes, and I think that's great insight because I know from working with many nonprofits over the years, everybody wears multiple hats. It's not common that you get to wear one hat. You might prefer one hat, but you have to put others on and do the best. So I am excited about this particular phase because this is where a CRM, I think, really kind of gets you started, and that's setting your Giving Tuesday goals and planning your campaign. So in a way, as the tagline says, it really is the time to get your hands dirty, digging in through your data and trying to figure out how do you set your kind of ship in the best direction for Giving Tuesday. So if you are kind of tracking and you can resonate with those 4 roles, I'm guessing you will not be surprised that the 2 that are really going to be involved in this particular phase are going to be our strategist and our administrator. So as we think about this first phase, we broke it down into different steps. And I am very much appreciating the fact that we've broken this down into stages and steps as opposed to a calendar timeline. I don't know about you, but 2022 is flying by, and I would be panic struck to the point of probably paralysis if I had to think about it in any other way. So again, I'm sure I am connecting with a couple of you who are very much like me in that regard. So first off, when we think about this first particular stage, we're talking about step 1 being reviewing your historical data. So hopefully you all are in a position where you have the ability to look at historical data. Now, many of you said that this is your first Giving Tuesday, so you don't have that historical data specifically for Giving Tuesday, but you might have some other historical data that you can use to help see some trends, maybe some interests of your constituent or donor base. And I know, Julia, you and I spoke about this in a separate conversation, and not to put you on the spot, but you had some good insight in terms of what do you do if this is your first Giving Tuesday and you don't have that specific historical data to refer back to. Do you have any quick insight to throw in here right now?
Sure. I think that even if you don't have a Giving Tuesday historical data reference, there are other specific giving asks that you could reference. For example, one year I reached out to my monthly givers and asked them to upgrade their monthly giving on Giving Tuesday. So that was still a very specific ask, and I was able to pull historical data in order to ask the right segment the right question. The same could be true for maybe live-ons. So people who gave last year but not this year, you can pull that list and segment your ask based on why, maybe when they all gave, or the average gift amount of your live-ons, things like that. So it doesn't necessarily have to be historical data about Giving Tuesday specifically, but if you can pull any data that gives you any information on your givers, then you're already a step ahead because you know what they're expecting or what they respond to.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that always kind of sticks in my mind is also trying to track like the communications, not just the giving, but the communications, which communication worked well. And then for those of you who have had Giving Tuesday in the past, then, you know, kind of what was the retention? What did go well? What were some things that it seemed like a good idea, but we need to pivot a little away from that. Another aspect of kind of reviewing that historical data is reviewing your budget requirements and kind of what we're hoping to kind of do this year doesn't fit in the scope of our budget, because I'm a dreamer and I can go well outside my budget, but you know, that's another piece of the puzzle. I think the other thing is that we want to, as Julia kind of alluded to, is who are your targeted segments? Knowing the audience and who the best audience is and how to segment and connect with them is going to be, you know, important in any fundraising initiative, but especially Giving Tuesday, because, you know, everybody has different preferences, and we want to try and find that out beforehand so that we're getting the best experience and giving them the best experience to partner with you. And then, of course, you know, when we talk about historical data, as Julia mentioned, and I'm sure many of you are thinking, is just pulling those reports that you have, whether they're in a CRM or Excel or there's paper, it doesn't really matter where it is, but pull reports that are going to support your reasoning for what you're hoping to do in your Giving Tuesday campaign. Now, with some of this, you know, review and kind of looking backwards, that's going to help you determine what you want to do moving forward. So that brings us to knowing and setting your goals. So what goals are you trying to meet? So what are your target amounts? What are your percent increases? Now, again, some of this is speaking as if you had a Giving Tuesday campaign in the past, but I think regardless whether it's your first, your second, or your fifth, you want to set a goal, and you want it to be, you know, I just was attending something, a SMART goal. You want it to be reasonable and realistic. Another aspect of all this that you want to kind of be mindful of is creating that infrastructure so that you can measure your goals, that you're going to be able to know, hey, did we meet what we set out to do? Some of the things that you might want to consider are things that are like, is there a program or an aspect of your mission that could use more support? Is there something happening within your community that your team feels strongly about? And I know that this is super important, you know, especially as kind of the idea that transformational fundraising is getting more and more attention. It's always been around, but it's definitely getting more attention, just knowing that community kind of connection. Some of the other things in terms of infrastructure and meeting goals that you might want to consider is, what's the quality of your data? Is it needing to be scrubbed? Is it needing to be updated? Does it need to be purged? And there are lots of different resources out there. In Donor Perfect, we have a DP address updater, I'll get the words out, that's powered by True Givers, and it helps you keep this critical personal information up to date, and it does it for you overnight. Another great thing that, you want to have that online form. Is it mobile responsive? Is it communicating the message that you want your audience to kind of interact and support? Test it out, make sure it's working the way that you want. Julia, I know I'm going to tap into your experience, but are there any other pieces of that infrastructure that you found super helpful as a development director?
Yeah, I think there's, I mean, obviously, I think being able to track it inside of your CRM is super important, because for me, I very often would share where we were on our goal. And so it needed to be readily available. The other thing, which was really helpful to me, is I could, and I know we're going to talk about this later in the presentation, but I could schedule reports so that the rest of my team could know where we were at a certain time during Giving Tuesday. So if my executive director was trying to find out at 6 p.m. how much we had raised so far, I could schedule a report to send to him whenever he needed it. So that was really convenient for me in order to keep everyone on the team on the same page.
Oh, absolutely. Communication, transparency, and you're talking internally, but then you can also turn that around for your supporters as well. And there's different tools that are available to do that, but that communication piece is really super important. Now, talking about stories, I'm just going to tell you all that Julia and her team do amazing jobs with stories, and I'm going to let her speak to the stories. But I know one of the things that is fun, it's not my strength, but it's fun, is to come up with a theme. So Julia, can you tell us a little bit about Go for the Story?
Yes, I love a good theme. I think themes really help people to feel like they are part of something, that they are kind of in the right vein. They're making sure that they know what's going on. It's consistent among all of your platforms, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But once you are able to develop a theme, then you can wrap a story around it. So for example, this example here, it says you can provide medical care to an animal in need. There's a specific ask happening here because it's wrapped around this theme of these animals, and you can see it in the photo that is an animal that needs some care. And so that will make a response in people to help them to be part of your bigger goal. And your fundraisers your donors love a theme too. They want to, like I said, want to be part of things. But I will say, and this is something we talked about earlier on, we don't necessarily consider Giving Tuesday a theme. Giving Tuesday is a big monster. There's a lot of people part of Giving Tuesday. So your theme should be something that's specific to you, specific to your organization, specific to your ask. It can't just be, hey, today's Giving Tuesday, you should give. There should be something deeper and more meaningful than it's a particular day of the week. The other thing is you can be kind of fun with it. So for example, one of the organizations that I've seen is a clothing donation center, and their Giving Tuesday is Giving Shoes Day. And so it's this funny reaction to Giving Tuesday, but it's themed for specifically what they're doing, which is really wonderful. And it helps people to feel like they're part of the mission of that particular organization. Or you can, be mindful of the time of year. So for example, if you are a food bank and you need to replenish your food bank in expectation of the end of year and of the holidays, maybe there's some particular theme that you can go along with for, restocking the cabinets, or however you want to make sure that people know that they're giving to your individual organization. And then in this second task, the determine viable avenues for this story, this is something that Kelly alluded to with the fact that there's so many places that you can post your theme or share your theme, your giving page, on your website, make sure it's on your social media. And again, it just makes the person who is giving to your organization feel like they're part of the journey, that the ask is not the end all be all, but it's this whole journey of, we'd like for you to help, here's how you can help, thank you for helping. And it's consistent and comforting to the giver to make sure they're part of a larger idea. Some of the things, sorry, Kelly, I want to go back to your question before. Some of the things that Donor Perfect specifically has and that I used so I was actually a client of Donor Perfect prior to working with Donor Perfect. And so I've used many of these tools in my campaigns, one of which was the DP text. So Donor Perfect has a texting platform. Your CRM should have a texting platform, or there are ways to find a texting platform, but Donor Perfect's in particular, you can text to your partners and then they can give via that text. So making things more consistent and convenient, but you're able to add your theme into a text message from your organization and put a photo on the top that says, provide medical care to an animal in need, and ask them right there through their text. We can do the same with DP video, which is shown here. You can send a specific video thanking a specific giver. We did this one year. We pulled our top 10% of givers and sent each of them an individualized video with their name, how much they gave, and what impact that made on our organization. And that was very well received by those partners because they knew that they personally had made an impact. So it's interesting. The story is so interesting because it's like a very broad concept, but then you can move it into these more specific ways of sharing the story, which is really
and
wonderful.
I think the other thing that I would interject is when you hear the word video, sometimes you think it has to be polished, and it really doesn't. And I know many donors really appreciate authenticity and just that, like, just use your phone, and just communicate and be real. And I think that that really is something that removes that barrier in telling your story.
100%, great point. So next, we're going to look at learning your network. So this is my sweet spot because, again, I know that many of you are a team of one. I know that it seems like you're doing this on your own. I know that maybe you don't have a staff that is focused on Giving Tuesday like you are, but I want to encourage you that you're not alone, that there are many people out there that are rooting for you. So whether that's your executive director or other staff members or volunteers, those people are great people to turn to and ask, hey, what do you think about this theme? Hey, what do you think about this tactic for getting people to know about what we're doing? Hey, does this ask make sense? There are people that you can ask about that. If not your staff, then your volunteers. If not your volunteers, your donors. Those people love you and are rooting for you, and you can turn to them and ask for their help on things. And then, as I mentioned earlier, you can schedule reports to make sure that everyone on your team knows where the goal stands. This was very convenient to me because I would just schedule it every 2 hours, and then I would not have to respond to all of the text messages. They would all know that a report was coming to their inbox, which was really convenient for me on a very busy fundraising day. So definitely encourage you to schedule some reports and to turn to people in your network that can help make sure that what you're saying makes sense. And then lastly, this is the same, needing to lean on other people to make sure that your donation page makes sense, that it's consistent with your other messaging, and that all of the boxes are checked in the sense of making sure that your theme is there, making sure that your ask is clear, making sure that someone giving knows what they're giving to. All of those things can be tested and brainstormed with people who are part of your network.
All right, so as we continue in this first stage, we're at a step where you're setting the stage and delegating tasks, because as you can imagine, you might be feeling, wow, there's a lot to do. So some of the things that you might want to consider is who's going to determine or how to prioritize each donor segment. How many hands or people do you need on deck to communicate? So you want to make sure that you're really kind of tapping into that team mentality. Who's going to develop your messaging for Giving Tuesday on the donation page? Are there any technical issues that your administrator might be able to help with? And I think one of the things that you might want to kind of discover, if you can, is does your CRM have the capacity to push out some of those reminders to you? So while I mentioned hands and people, your CRM might be able to become, if you will, quote, a person and help you with this delegation of tasks. The other thing is you want to kind of think through your campaign tools and resources. And so it's not just the story, but it's being positive. I'm going to get donations. People are going to support me. So if they do that, do I have what I need in place now so that when that happens, I can grow with it? So things like that online form and recurring giving, promote recurring giving and monthly giving. And do you have resources that are going to allow you to be successful to take the second gift and the third gift? So you want to make sure that you have all of those campaign resources available to you. Explore opportunities for new donors, new major donors, matching gifts. That's a big one. It's a great opportunity. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Julia Campbell, but she has a wealth of information about matching gifts that I would encourage you to track down. Consider a giving contest to increase the momentum. And I think Julia, somebody on our team had a great example. I don't know if it was Julia or another colleague, but you want to create a plan to increase the rate of second-time gifts, because again, if these are first-time donors, you really want to be excited about it, but get them kind of under your wing so that you can share your stories and you can promote your mission so that they're going to be intrigued and want to give that second gift, because the donor retention rate is amazing if you can get a first-time donor to become a second gift supporter. It goes from like 13% of a first time to 69% if they're a second gift giver, which is just unbelievable. A couple of other things to just kind of be, there we go, to be aware of is developing that plan to acquire and retain your donors. As I mentioned, I had a little lag there in my slides. So how are you going to retain your donors? Certainly saying thank you in a timely manner, critical, but really could be very easy if you have everything kind of in place leading into Giving Tuesday. Rely and lean into that CRM that you have. Some of the other things that you can do in, at least in Donor Perfect, and I'm sure it's in other CRMs, is to set it up so it's telling you, it's giving you the information so that, hey, you got this great contribution, reach out to this person, say thank you, send a video. So you want to kind of just develop this plan now, thinking this is going to happen. And then, of course, you want to make sure that you're using the communication platforms that are going to resonate with that person. So if they're a texter, if they're an email, if they're, dare I say it, snail mail, it's out there. So you really want to know the audience so that you can communicate with them in a timely manner so that you're engaging them, so that they're not just giving at Giving Tuesday, they're wanting to learn more and continue to support you. So that's a lot for phase one, but let's keep moving here and move into phase two. And we're going to talk about creating actionable Giving Tuesday communications. And Julia, let's see your light shine. Here you go.
Thanks, Kelly. Yes, so now we know all these back-end things that we're doing before we get started on telling everyone about it. All that stuff that Kelly just went through is setting yourself up for success. You're setting the infrastructure for what you're going to tell your supporters. And now we're going to talk about actually telling them. So in this phase, there's going to be two roles that we focus on. Again, these two roles could be handled by one person or by 5 people. Maybe you have a social media person and an email person and a networker. You know, it doesn't mean there's only 2 people doing these things. It's just broken into 2 halves. So we're going to really focus on the communicator and the networker. And just as a reminder, there are multiple people that can serve these roles, even if they're not necessarily on your staff. You're still able to lean on volunteers or board members, or your executive director could be your networker. My networker was my executive director, even though he wasn't necessarily on the development team. He was the person that I would make sure is putting information out there and is rallying the troops. And he was kind of the hype guy. So making sure to deputize him in a way that allowed him to share the message was really important. Okay, so now we're going to go into how to communicate your theme. We've talked a little bit about this, but to dive deeper, your giving form should be very consistent with your messaging. People should know that they're giving to your organization on Giving Tuesday because your form says so. And you can remind the giver of their impact by adding blurbs about your campaign, by breaking down your giving amounts. For example, if you wanted to have a specific theme, if you were giving Christmas trees to families who were not able to purchase their own Christmas trees, and on your giving form it said, hey, $20 buys a Christmas tree, that's a Santa's Little Helper gift. You bought a Christmas tree for someone. Making that specific theme ask is really important and is really helpful to lead people to the dollar amount that you're hoping that they'll give. You can remember to use the amounts that are appropriate, so a small, medium, and large, so that you don't ostracize people. And that also really depends on your goal. Kelly mentioned, you could have a goal that's maybe not monetary. So for example, one year our goal was to get 100 new givers on Giving Tuesday, people that had never given to my organization before. So we had a very, very low threshold of giving. We actually only asked for $2 that day, out of hopes that those people would become second-time donors and third-time donors, but getting them in the door. So for me, on that particular Giving Tuesday, my asks were 2, 4, 6, 8. But the next year, we needed to raise $15,000 on Giving Tuesday for a specific program. So my asks were different because my goal was different. So just encouraging you to use those specific asks in the way that is most appropriate for your goal, not necessarily most appropriate for a giving form in general, but what will help you get to your goal. We would also encourage you to consider messaging for tribute donations so people can give in honor or in memory of someone. You can access a matching gift, maybe from your board, maybe asking everyone on your board to give a certain amount, and then that amount will be your matching gift using the leverage of your network, as mentioned before. You can also consider a giving contest and appointing social media ambassadors. This is one that's really interesting to me. I worked with an organization that worked in schools, and so the students love social media, and so they often would post things on their social media about what was going on in our organization, and using them to really help share the story was a great way to widen our ability to communicate the theme. And then this is sharing about spreading the word. So in Donor Perfect specifically, we were able to spread the word straight from our CRM. We have a built-in email templates and email system where you can send it right from the donor page. Yes, record. Thank you. Gosh, I kept wanting to say review. The donor record. Thank you. You can send it right from the donor record, and then you can track if they opened the email, how they interacted with the email, which is really a great way to spread the word. And in this case, your networker can be the person that's spreading the word, whether that's social media, via email, if they're making phone calls. And again, your networker could be all 10 members of your board. They all make 10 phone calls over the course of the week of Giving Tuesday, some way to make sure that the word is getting out there. And then this is just, let's just take a breath for 1 second. This is the middle of this checklist, which is great. We went through so many things already, but now we're in the middle. So halfway done and halfway to go. And that is like, shows how bite-sized each of these things are. But when you put them all together, it is an entire Giving Tuesday campaign, which is really cool.
Yes. Bite size is important because otherwise you feel like you're going to get pummeled, but continuing.
Yes, very true. Okay, so this next slide is about communicating the impact. This whole slide is about sharing stories, which I love stories. I am a storyteller. I love to share where someone was, this, climax of impact, and then where they are now. Making sure to share the full circle story is super important. For example, the organization that I worked with is heading into their 25th year this year, and they're collecting stories from people who've gone through our clubs for years and years past. And it's going to be amazing to see where they were when they first went through our clubs and where they are now. And those stories are stories of life impact. 25 years later, this is what this person is doing, and this is how they've been affected by our organization. And being able to show that whole story will be very impactful. And if you don't have access to stories, or for those of you who said that you're new to your organization and this is your first Giving Tuesday, again, I just encourage you to rely on your network. Rely on the people, the beneficiaries of your organization. Rely on other staff members. Rely on people who have been giving to the organization for a long time. They have a story too. Why do they give to that organization? One time at an event, someone stood up and said, I give to this organization because I have a full-time job and I can't do what they do. And it's my opportunity to be part of making the world a better place. What a cool story that this person is giving their money away because they can't give their time away. So they're giving their money, and that's how much they believe in the organization. And that's one of my givers. So imagine the stories that can come from the volunteers or the beneficiaries of the program. And then also you can call and text for the networker. You can call, text, meet with partners, meet with the community members, and explain the urgency and the relevancy of your Giving Tuesday campaign. The donor outreach will not necessarily happen organically. These are things you'll have to plan and be mindful of. Plan out how many coffees you're going to have with your board to secure that matching gift. Plan out who you're going to take with you to your construction site to show them the house that you're funding on Giving Tuesday. Planning out these very specific networker opportunities is really important and is something that you can do prior to the actual giving day that will really be beneficial on the actual giving day. And then next, we're going to talk about how to hype the campaign. So this obviously will take the communicator and the networker and everyone else who's ever heard of your organization or seen your organization or knows anything about your organization. Everyone is part of the hype. We want to get the word out as much as possible because, as mentioned, Giving Tuesday is not a reason to give. The reason to give is your organization's mission. The reason to give is to give care to an animal that needs it. The reason to give is not, hey, it's the Tuesday after Thanksgiving, everybody's giving, let's give. That's not a reason. The reason has to be something that means impact for your community or for the world or for whatever your focus is. So making sure that your message is tailored to your mission will help your giver to feel involved and to feel part of the overall ask, which is really important when it comes to being part of sharing your treasure with people. They want to know why it's important. So making sure that your message is clear and is timely and is unique to you is very important. You can also share your reminders for the campaign, making sure to plan out some of those timelines. How many times are you going to tell people about it? When are you going to tell people about it? How much is too much, which is a common question when it comes to Giving Tuesday, and then making sure that those reminders and those promotions all, again, tie in with a theme and use the same template, but change so that people see the progression of the goal and of the ask. And then next, we'll talk about planning donor stewardship, which this is always very fun because it's not asking, which is so great. It's so great when you give and then somebody says, thank you, and that's it. They don't say, thank you, please give again, please give now. There's an opportunity for you to say thank you to your donors, which is really amazing. And you want to make sure that you're developing these content updates when it comes to saying, hey, yeah, we've raised some money so far today. Like, yes, we've raised $1,000. We need another 1,000. that acknowledges the fact that somebody has given, and it gives opportunity for new people to give as well. We did, one year we did this thing where we lit up a word, and every time someone gave $1,000, we would light a bulb in the word. And so we would send updates every so often with the correct number of bulbs lit, which was really cool, because then people would see, you know, we have 3 bulbs left. That means we need $3,000, and I want to be part of lighting that last bulb or whatever. So making sure to have a creative way to communicate your goal and how you're reaching your goal and how people can specifically help is really great. And then you can let your donors know in groups how things are going. So making sure that you know, your major donors know that you know that they gave a big gift. That happened to me one year. As a major donor gave a huge gift, and I did not directly thank them for that, and that was a mistake on my part. That was someone who really helped us get to our goal, and I should have directly addressed that with them. My executive director called them the next day, so it was fine. We figured it out, but it would have been great to call them right away and thank them for what they had done. And the same for smaller givers. You know, if somebody becomes a monthly donor on Giving Tuesday, you can write them a card that says, hey, welcome to the family. You're part of making this mission happen every single month. Acknowledging their very specific gift on this day is important.
All right, so here we are. We're at phase 3, and we are getting close to the end of our time together. So we want to talk about some tips for successful Giving Tuesday stewardship. And, you know, it says take a deep breath, but at this point, you're probably exhausted. And the thought of taking a deep breath is like, oh, can I? Yes, you can. You absolutely can. And I think at this point, when I think about stewardship, as Julia said, saying thank you is so, so powerful and so, so important. And it really, it's going to use all of us. It's going to use the strategist, the administrator, the communicator, and the networker. So, you know, we acknowledge that, you know, you might be wearing all 4 hats, but I think the takeaway is, regardless of kind of your angle, trying and working to keep your supporters in the know and saying thank you is really what's most important here. So as we think about keeping the stewardships in the know, Julia, do you want to talk a little bit about these communicators and networkers?
Sure, yeah. So for the communicator, there's a really important strategy for the goal updates, and that's that, you know, there are some rules of thumb when it comes to how many times you should communicate with people during the course of Giving Tuesday, prior to and after as well. But if you can think through your plan, you know, when are you going to communicate with them? What are you going to say to them? Why are you communicating at that time? Are you communicating a goal update? Are you communicating a last chance to give? What is your message during that time? I would recommend 3 times throughout the day when you can update your donors about the progress, and then at the end have a kind of, hey, last chance to really be part of this particular day. Or you can also plan to just do updates when exciting things happen. So for example, if you did secure a matching gift and your matching gift was met, that's a time to share something and tell people, hey, we made our matching gift. Thank you so much for being part of it. Or, hey, we have 5 hours left of Giving Tuesday and we have $1,000. You know, if everybody on this email gave $3, we would make our goal. Something that's a specific time-sensitive communication on the day of is very important. And then also get creative. Try and figure out what integrations you have access to. For example, maybe in the morning you send an email, and then at 10 a.m. you send a text message, and then at noon you send a carrier pigeon. I don't know. There are multiple ways for you to send information to your donors. So I encourage you to assess all of the things that you have, all the tools that you have at your fingertips, and use those to communicate in more ways than one. People are getting so many emails. Like I get so many emails a day, and I'm not sitting at my desk constantly opening emails. Maybe I'm more accessible via text message, or maybe I'm scrolling through my phone and a better way for you to get a hold of me is through Instagram. You never know. So trying multiple platforms to share your updates is really important. And then the networker also has the opportunity to do that on their own platforms. So maybe your executive director has their own social media and they can share, hey, we're so close to our goal, please give. And that's different than sharing on your company's social media because your executive director has different followers or a different platform and a different voice. So it's always helpful to use more than one voice in this while you're giving the updates.
Absolutely. And I think part of what can be communicated is really some of what you're finding in your report. So I, have helped many nonprofits over the years with questions like, so how did we do in a giving campaign, in this case in Giving Tuesday? And you want to be able to report not only on the Giving Tuesday campaign itself, that's an important piece. How many new donors, how many recurring or retained donors, how much money did we raise? But you also want to know more about like which channel worked well. Was it our Facebook post? Was it our email? Was it the first email? Was it the second email? And if you're using integrations with your CRM, so for example, Donor Perfect has an integration with Constant Contact, you're able to see the click rate and the performance of the email, but you can also see at a donor level, what did Susie Blue do with this first email? Did she do anything with the second email? Oh, look, she forwarded the third email. So you're able to report on that type of information. And what that will do is not only show how you performed for this year's Giving Tuesday, but that becomes like the feeding information for future campaigns and future Giving Tuesday campaigns. So you want to definitely be able to kind of go back to those goals of segments that you set at the beginning and now have that reporting mechanism and now run those reports. Some of the other things that you want to do is determine the statistics or wins you'd like to share with your donors. That transparency. I know I'm a donor, and as a donor, I want to know, how did my nonprofit do? Whether it was good or bad, I want to know. I want that transparency factor. And so, hopefully you're going to be able to gain and see some, key performance indicators. And, it might be a quick grab of an image. It might be a report, but I think keeping in mind that you want to kind of determine what's going to be most easily understood and the most impactful to an audience, because just sending them like this sheet of numbers is not really for everybody. Actually, it's for very few people. And so you really want to kind of know that audience. The other thing, and we've touched on it already, is expressing your gratitude. So you want to be timely in saying thank you for the gift. Absolutely. And you can do, kind of the legwork ahead of time of creating templates, whether that's a letter, a mail merge template, or an email template. And you want to make sure that the message is communicating your gratitude for them as a person and their contribution for partnering with you. But you also want to think beyond the initial gift. You want to make sure that you're expressing gratitude post Giving Tuesday, that ongoing sense of gratitude. And again, you could do that in a very individualized way, whether that be an email, maybe that's where you can deploy the use of video, or even if a person's preferred channel is texting, then send them that in a text, but it doesn't always have to be thank you and then ask. It could be thank you, thank you, thank you. And then they're starting to get more information about you as an organization. Now, I, of course, have to pay attention to the clock here as we keep going. We're going to talk a little bit more about expressing gratitude. So Julia, if you want to, again, speak to the communicator and networker, I think we'll get it all squeezed in our allotted time and then open it up for questions. But go ahead and what do we have here about our communicators?
Of course. So as Kelly mentioned, one of the really cool things is when you're able to know your givers. And so this particular task is about tailoring your thank yous based on your donor group. So this one is interesting because you can pull by segment. Again, like I said earlier, monthly giving. If your monthly givers updated their giving on Giving Tuesday, then you want to send a specific message to those monthly givers and say, hey, we noticed you updated your giving. it would be very strange if you sent a message to them that said, hey, thanks for giving, because they already were giving. It's not that they gave that day, it's that they upgraded that day. So you want to make sure that your messaging is tailored to what the person did that day. The way you can do that, as Kelly mentioned, is by pulling reports or by knowing about your donor, what they gave to or what they responded to, things like that. So making sure that you have those things in place to be able to send the right message to the right person is really important. And then if you have the capacity, we want you to reach out to your major donors, like I mentioned with the videos. It's really helpful when you use their name and talk about what they've given. One year we were trying to raise money for backpacks. And so we did videos based on how much money they gave. So I was able to say, hey, so-and-so, you gave X amount and that bought 50 backpacks. And thank you. So that's 50 kids that are going to have a backpack that maybe wouldn't have otherwise. And there's this opportunity to like put a face to what they just gave. And we encourage you to really do that in a specific way and in a way that will help your donor to know the impact that they've made. And then that is the end of our presentation. Obviously, there's so much more to talk about when it comes to Giving Tuesday. And that checklist is something that is a great jumping off point. Obviously, it's not going to be everything for everyone, but it's a great place to start. If you'd like to download that checklist, this QR code will allow you to do so. We encourage you to download it and get started on your Giving Tuesday using that checklist. And we thank you so much. Thank you, Kelly. You're the best. Kelly knows so much about our CRM, and it's really helpful to see all the things that you can do inside of the CRM using Donor Perfect and using all of the segmenting and things. So thank you so much for that.
Well, ladies, thank you. That was some incredible information. So we did have a couple questions. One from Elise that says, what have you noticed about the response to invitations to give on social media? Email is a given, but I've heard mixed reviews on social asks. What works best right now to cause action?
This is interesting. I love this question, Elise. Thank you so much for asking. It's interesting because I think it really depends on your organization. For example, my organization had a lot of givers that were part of Facebook, but were not part of TikTok or Instagram. And so we never did an ask on TikTok or Instagram because the people on TikTok and Instagram were our students and they were not the people giving to our organization. So we did asks on Facebook. However, you run into certain issues. For example, right now with Facebook, if someone gives on Facebook, you do not get their contact information. And that's really hard because if you're trying to thank those givers and you don't have their contact information, there's no way to do that. So it kind of depends on what your end goal is. One year we did do an ask on Instagram because it was the $2 ask and it was this, bottom level, like not a huge thing. People didn't have to feel nervous about giving $2. So I think there's a lot of factors that go into what the best platform is.
Right.
The other thing that I would just interject though too is if you have an opportunity to use like an online form that is connected to your CRM, use like a bit.ly link, I'm sure that they would provide, and use that on a social site, because then that is going to go directly, there's like that efficiency factor, and it removes some of those barriers that could potentially get in the way with other social sites. So texting, social, Facebook, Instagram, whatever it is, tweeting, whatever you use, if you can use something that is your CRM solution, it's going to be a better win all the way around.
That's a great point, Kelly. Yeah, very, very link in bio, not give through whatever. That's a great point.
We did have an early question from Valentina when you guys were going about talking about reports, and she said, what did you use for scheduling the reports that you were mentioning?
So we actually, within Donor Perfect, we have a scheduling component. So it is actually something that is built into into Donor Perfect. So we were alluding to the capabilities that were part of Donor Perfect.
Gotcha. And then Amanda had asked if you could elaborate on your thank yous.
In terms of
it says, how elaborate do you go Oh, I think it's text substituted. I think she's saying, how elaborate are the thank yous?
Ah, okay. You know, Julia, in my experience and observation, again, I think it depends on the audience. I think some of it depends on the whole Giving Tuesday campaign in terms of, is it the receipt that's saying thank you and you're just passing on that more tax information, or is it telling the story of here's how we did? I think it really depends on the thank you. So Julie, I don't know if you those are my thoughts to that question.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And for me, like I mentioned, you know, for our really high level donors, we sent them a 1-minute video talking about how amazing they were and what they did to impact our organization. But I think it's interesting because if we're going so far out of our way to make an ask on a normal day, they're not going to an event, they're not, you know, whatever. It's like a more out of the blue ask. I think an out of the blue thank you is important. Whether that's a handwritten note that says thanks for giving on Giving Tuesday, like you could get a postcard with your theme on the front of it that says thanks for giving on Giving Tuesday, and then you're on the back you say you made a difference and sign your name, and that is such a specific thank you for a specific ask. I encourage that. Although I know that many of you have many jobs and many things to do. So even if it's not a handwritten note, still mailing out a thank you that says thanks for giving on Giving Tuesday acknowledges that they were part of a big day that raised money for your organization, and they should be thanked for that.
I agree. The more personal that you can get it, the better. But I want to also point out that, you know, take advantage of the donation receipt. You know, that is an opportunity to say thank you, and you can elaborate and put some details about how your gift has helped. You can, you know, do different links in there to, you know, for additional things, not additional asks, but maybe additional links on, you know, how they can volunteer, how they can become a recurring giver. But again, you know, use that as a medium. It looks like that is all of our questions. So I did want to just cover one thing that you guys had mentioned, which ties nicely into what I was going to say in closing. We are going to be sending out a copy of the recording and the presentation, as well as some different links, a link to the checklist that the ladies have been mentioning and sharing in case you missed that QR code. But we also are going to include some other resources to help you, some templates on Giving Tuesday for emails, for social media. I think that'll be a great help. You guys mentioned Julia Campbell, and we do a lot of work with her as well. So we do have some different blogs and webinars that she's done with us available on our resource center if you do a search for Julia Campbell on the QGive site. So again, ladies, I just want to say thank you so much for everything today. And thank you everyone for, you know, your time. And we do have the contact information here if you'd like to contact the QGive or Donor Perfect team. But again, you're going to receive this via email. So hope you guys have a successful Giving Tuesday and end of year giving campaign. Thank you for all of your time today. Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Kelly. Bye. Bye, everyone.